Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore, rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them." Has there been a point where you have had maybe a crisis of faith, where you felt like God was more distant in your life than at another time?
I'm trying to think of a specific time. There's definitely been relationships in my life where I thought that they were the end all be all, and they're like friendships that I couldn't let go of, and friendships that I was so sucked into that I felt like they were the only person that I could go to. And then my mom kind of came to me and she said, "This is not healthy. This is not what you need to involve yourself with if you want to, be successful." And it was really hard to listen to her because I tend to put a lot of my relationship and a lot of my time into people at school and into different environments that I'm in, and hearing from my mom that she didn't want me around certain people was hard. And that I definitely had to think about like a third perspective, because I had my school perspective and I had my mom's, and I had to think like, what's God's perspective on this? And it was kind of a challenge for me to realize that I didn't need that relationship in my life. And not only did my mom help me through that, but God showed up and he said, "This isn't right for you," and he told me about it.
So as you look back on that, was it a good decision for you to maybe
Absolutely,
remove yourself from those?
My mom always says that I should listen to her, and she was right that time. And it took me a while to realize it because I'm a little bit stubborn when it comes to that, but yeah.
Not really. I always kind of feel like, being here and breathing is, God's done everything he has to do. Anything extra is just kind of icing on the cake.
That's a pretty cool way of looking at it.
It makes it easier when he says no.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, I felt that God's distant, mainly because of my actions, mainly because of me getting caught up in everything I'm involved in, and just not taking the time to think about where God is in the moment.
Okay, so maybe just part of putting him aside created that crisis of faith for you.
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned earlier, my whole childhood was pretty comfortable for me, but this past August I was diagnosed with a tumor on my pituitary gland, and so that was kind of and a bunch of other stuff happened at the same time, so it was a little bit of like overwhelmed with how much change was going on and how much unknown was going on in my life. It still is currently going on in my life. But I think that foundation that I mentioned earlier from my childhood was what really kept me going. And in those moments, it's when that knowledge that I had in my brain kind of was turned into like a walk of faith. And I never really had to go through that, so it was a hard transition to be like, okay, I've seen other people go through things and God was faithful, but now I have to like let him be faithful in my own life when it's not so comfortable. He's always been faithful, it's never been something that I had to worry about. Like, it was always just kind of easy, smooth sailing.
Yeah.
So when things started to change, it got really overwhelming, but I always had so much peace about it. Like, I felt like I was just kind of watching the storm float by. I didn't ever feel like I was drowning in the storm.
That's a pretty amazing gift.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was.
So my freshman year of high school, I started having really bad seizures, and I had to choose whether I wanted to trust in the Lord or like totally walk away, and I just had to choose if I wanted my faith to be my own and not my parents. And so I started to trust in the Lord more and like grow deeper in the Word, and I think Israel was a big part of that. When I went to Israel my junior year, I had a seizure right before I went, and the Lord was like totally faithful in all that, and it was something that I would never thought I would be able to do, but it was just a total walk of faith, and something that I look back on and think of the Lord's mercy and the Lord's faithfulness like through everything.
Mm-hmm. I remember that time really well. That took a lot of courage on your part to step out in faith and go, God, I believe you're calling me to Israel, even though I have a lot of fear about what that could look like.
Yeah.
But you were really brave in that moment. And I think you've seen God's faithfulness because of that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
My sophomore year, my grandparents died within a week of each other. And then the next month, my other grandfather died. And that was a huge challenge in my faith and made me really question like whether or not I believed. And thankfully I got through that, and my faith grew stronger, and I am a stronger Christian today because of it.
That's amazing. You let God use that, because those are really hard things.
Yeah, it was really hard.
So what does rebellion look like to you in your life? Do you find yourself, when you rebel, because I'm assuming at some point, somewhere along the way, you push back a little bit. What does that look like for you?
For me, it's more like, might be like sometimes the people I hang around with are just like getting caught up in worldly things and not having my eyes focused on what God has for my life. Such as like if my friends are doing something wrong or something and I don't want to be the one to say, no, don't do that, or like get in the way of what they're doing just because of what they might think of me or something like that, then I might just like go along with it or just like let it be just because I think it's fine or something like that. So that's what I've been trying to focus on, is almost being like helping keep my friends accountable too in that way, and like helping them also grow in a relationship with Jesus too.
I think that's awesome. I think sometimes we confuse like our friendships with like following them, but really the loving thing to do is to probably say something, you know, but it doesn't feel loving because it feels awkward and all that at the time, but that really is the loving thing to do.
Yeah, so one of the things for me is, I'm at church. We're at church every Sunday, involved in when I was little, Awana, VBS, just like the whole thing. And so a lot of it was, you don't really feel like going to church, and then it makes you feel like, I don't know, this is boring, there's no point into this, when really, like, it's what's feeding you and helping you grow more in your faith. And so that was one of the things that I really struggled with, was getting to the place where I actually like wanted to go hear the Word of God preached. And so I think now I realized that, and so it's been good and fun for me to go to church.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
There's a transition that happens in there.
Oh yeah, I
Push
like to test the line a little bit every once in a while. Yeah, mainly just like throughout my life, it's just like seeing how I can like make myself look like I'm not doing anything wrong. But a lot of times it's like I have to check my intentions. Like, am I doing these things for the right reasons? And am I doing things and making excuses for why it's okay? And being able to kind of like realize, like, look at my own situations through God's eyes and seeing how it really is, like the reality of what I'm doing and why I'm doing that.
That's a pretty brave thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to live in denial about our behavior and the things that we do. So that's a really brave thing to do.
Off the top of my head, I not a ton comes to mind, really.
So you've never been rebellious?
Probably have, but
When do you find times when you push back more than others?
Frankly, I was raised obedient, so the most rebellious I tend to get is just kind of being curt. That's about it.
My daughter once said, because when she was growing up, I said to her, she was such a good, obedient child, and she said to me, she goes, Mom, I was outwardly obedient and inwardly rebellious.
That's a fact.
So I can totally understand that. what do you find is the hardest thing besides getting the time in to spend with God? What do you find is like the hardest thing about being a Christ follower?
I would say like not really seeing like really the like fruit of your labor, kind of like you're kind of putting in all this work and sometimes it feels like you're not really getting anything in return, which I mean is a really selfish like outlook, especially since we're like you're kind of doing things for the sole purpose of like pleasing God, which should be like what we want to do, but we're always kind of thinking about like me, you know. So yeah, I would say definitely just like putting God's wishes above my own, because like I don't know, I think sometimes it's easy to just be kind of selfish and do what I want to do instead of what's probably like best for my relationship with God.
Yeah, and we get that results mentality, you know, we kind of want to see it all the time.
And I'm really like results driven kind of, so that's hard for me. But.
Yeah, I can see that. And what would you say God is teaching you right now in your life?
I mean, right now there's so many ups and downs and there's so much going on. Right now I feel like he's kind of teaching me just to slow down and think. I did a lot last year. I had a lot on my plate, and this year I've kind of relinquished a lot of that stuff, and you know, I'm half as busy as I was last year, and my mind still was flustered in the beginning of the year, and I didn't really have a reason for it to be because I wasn't doing much. But he's been kind of telling me in these last few months, probably, he's been saying, like, calm down, everything is okay, life will go on, you know. Not everything has to be perfect or set in place. I'll work it out for you.
Yeah.
God is teaching me to see him in more things than just miracles and crazy supernatural events. God is teaching me to see him in the beautiful small moments that I try to live in.
That's really good. I think that perspective is nice because we get to see him in a grander scale than just the mountains and the, you know, sometimes it's in the day-to-day moments.
God's currently teaching me to be patient and just to kind of let go with college and decisions that I have to make for next year. I think I'm trying to decide where I want to go and what I want to do, and ultimately I have to learn to just like let it go and give it to the Lord and know that he's going to lead me and shut those doors to the places that he doesn't want me to go and open the ones that he wants me to go.
Do you think that is easier for you to do now because of all that you've been through, with even going back to freshman year with owning your faith? Do you find it easier to trust God now because you've trusted him a little bit along the way every time?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely easier to trust God, but I also find it hard because it's a new experience. It's a new kind of trust that I have to place in him, and a totally different experience than what I'm used to going through or used to experiencing.
Yeah.
Question everything. You know, if he's really God, then he'll have the answer. So go ahead and question it.
So in other words, he's giving you permission to question and wrestle and.
Yeah.
What does grace mean to you?
Grace to me is just perfect forgiveness because we mess up so much. Of course, grace encompasses so much, and it's not just one easy definition, but to me it's just that forgiveness that he gave us without anything in return.
Pretty amazing.